Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Calling us from the Orlando, Florida area, we have Mark DiBona on the phone. Mark is retired Seminole County Sheriff's Department officer, and thanks for your service, Mark, and thanks for being a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
It's truly an honor, Jay, to be on the show, and I'm very much looking forward to this. I've been looking forward all day, as a matter of fact, so this is going to be a good talk. Absolutely.
I've been aware of Mark for quite a while. He's one of these guys who's very active on social media, on Facebook, and we got to talk about a new social media platform I've been using. I'm very happy with, called MeWe. Be sure to check out MeWe.com. Anyway, you are retired from Seminole County Sheriff's Department, but you're from Boston area originally, correct?
Yeah. I was born and raised in Boston. I started my career in 1985. I started with a town right outside of Boston called Braintree. Worked there for a couple of years. Went on to the Amtrak police. Now, a lot of people don't realize Amtrak has their own police department. Worked for them up to 94. Then my wife and I decided we wanted to move to Florida. So then I picked up 25 years in the Seminole County Sheriff's Office and retired as a patrol sergeant.
And, well, by the way, one sergeant and another, that's the best job in the department, and it's the hardest job in the department.
Oh my God! You know, you must be spying on me on my presentations because that's what I say. I say the exact same thing. I decided to go no further than sergeant by choice. I never took lieutenant's test once. I was a sergeant for 19 years. It is the most hardest position and the most difficult position in an agency because number one, you have to lead by example. And number two, you have to rub elbows with the administration a little bit, and sometimes that can be difficult, as we know. But for the most part, if you're there for the guys and girls, and there's nothing better than being a frontline troop, nothing better than that.
Well, people don't seem to understand. And some departments have corporals and then sergeants. My department had a sergeant, and we were responsible for managing the troops, making sure they did their job the best of their ability, making sure they followed all the rules, all the laws, everything else, and making sure they're protected and they're okay. It's a fine balance. You're always juggling. And my job primarily was to keep heat from the lieutenants on up off of my troops.
I used to tell my troops this, and a lot of people have repeated this from me. Number one, if you think I don't need to know something, then by all means don't tell me, okay? But never lie to me, and I will protect you 110%. If you're in the wrong, you're the right, or in the middle, or whatever, because that was our job as a sergeant, is to keep it away from the lieutenant. You know, obviously there's some things that we have to report to the lieutenant, obviously, but for the most part, if you have a happy work environment, happy employees deliver a happy product.
And we
all know the cop that's miserable, you know that hates everybody, and on and on and on. Well, some of that is leadership also, and that's our job, is to motivate unmotivated people.
That's absolutely right, and to take time to get to know them, how's things at home, all those things. I remember having those conversations. And before we get in our conversation about your career, one of the most important things I feel as a sergeant was my conversation when I had new troops or was new to a squad. I always explained to them very simple things. Look, you're human. You make mistakes. You make mistakes doing your job. That's fine. Don't make it worse by covering up or trying to lie for something that was explainable. Don't do it. Yeah. And the other thing was, don't get in trouble not doing your job. That was the other thing.
Right. Amen. And I agree with you 100%, Jay, on that. Absolutely. Never lie, never try to make it look better. Or, people are human. We do make mistakes. One of the things I used to say to the guys and girls all the time, too, was I always asked them, a new person that came onto the squad, or if I went to a new squad, I always ask them where would they like to be in 5 years, career-wise, whether it's detective, SWAT, sergeant, whatever. But the biggest question I asked them all the time is, what do you expect from me? And I had so many officers and seasoned officers say, I've never had a sergeant say that to me. Well, I need to know what you expect from me. And again, I will back you 110% as long as you're doing the right thing, and I can do the right thing with you.
Absolutely. I get this all the time. Even today, people say, well, I guess that perpetrator fell down the stairs. I'm like, no, that didn't happen. If we had to put our hands on someone, we always wrote it down and we told the truth about why we did it. There was none of this, the guy fell. That didn't happen. Just didn't. If you had to beat up somebody, look, just tell us why.
Exactly. See, and that's the culture that we're in now. Is people are afraid. Officers are afraid to put their hands on somebody, obviously because of cell phones. What's going on in Portland, Seattle, and the insanity that's going on. Anti-law enforcement. But cops right now, they're afraid to put their hands on somebody. And there's no law that says we can't put their hands on somebody. It just has to be done the right way. And when I was the public information officer for Seminole County Sheriff's Office at one time, was the 9-time PIO, and I had to do a interview on a deputy that put somebody on the ground, split his head open, and the video looked absolutely horrible. But one thing I said is any response to resistance is not going to look pretty. That's the bottom line. It is just not. But compliance and truthfulness will go much more further than it will, oh, yeah, you're right. He tripped when we were going down the stairs, or when I was putting him in the cruiser, he accidentally hit his head. We all know that's a bunch of BS.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you're truthful in your reports, the truth will set you free, like that old saying goes. And I learned that from my mom. Always own up to your mistakes. Always own up to something you could always make something good out of something bad. Now, if cops are outright beating people up, okay, that's a whole different story. That first of all, that cop shouldn't be on the job anyways if he's a bully, and shouldn't be beating people up.
Right.
But
that's
when
something
people
else
resist, they take that chance of being hurt or even being killed, and that's a chance they take. And when we have our administrators now saying at riots, they're not gatherings. Yeah, they're riots, okay? And do not arrest anybody. If they spit on you, just take it. If they punch you, they kick you, that's part of your job. No, that's not part of your job. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Because what message does that send to the public, to the good people that are watching these riots, saying, oh, my God, these are out of control, and the cops aren't doing anything about it? What message does it send to them? Horrible message.
Well, the message is, quite frankly, and I watch the videos. I saw the videos of cops at riot scenes. I saw the ones in New York having water thrown on them. I saw the chief patrol being hit in the head, and I saw no action. And that just didn't fly back in our day. We had very set rules. I didn't put my hands on you. You don't put your hands on me. If you do, or you threaten to put your hands on me, it's game on, and use of force is always justified in those situations, and it's always ugly. What's the old saying about making sausage? Everybody loves it, but no one wants to see it being made.
Exactly. It's like that old Chris Rock video where he says he talks about resisting the police, and he says one thing that if you run from the police, they're going to bring kicking with them. Yeah, and it's a funny line that he uses. We're not making fun of police force by any means, but when you're in a riot situation and you're in a cop's face and you're spitting on them and shoving them, and then you put your hands up in the air and say, "Don't touch me." Well, you put yourself in that situation, and I've got no pity for you whatsoever.
Also, there are many times we've had countless experiences where people have gone like they're going to surrender, and then they use deadly force, and the officer is severely injured and or killed. This is the Law Enforcement Show. You can find us on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. We're talking retired Sheriff Sergeant Mark DiBona. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. I'm going to let you in a little secret that's been a game changer for me with social media. You can get details at letpops.com. So redirect letpops.com. It's called Chatbots. They're Meta partners. Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, WhatsApp, and soon to be TikTok. You can turn those people that visit and engage with your content on social media into consumers and then sometimes customers, and you can market to them. Get details. Best of all, you can get started for free. letpops.com. That's letpops.com. Again, it's letpops.com. Back to our conversation with retired Sheriff Sergeant Mark DiBona, retired from Seminole County, Florida Sheriff's Department. Also, law enforcement experience in the Massachusetts area. He got, 25 or 30 years total?
33, actually.
33?
So, yeah, one of the old guys, man.
You're a geezer.
I started when I was 21. Yep.
And would you say that you are salty, or are you pleasant now?
I am at peace in my life. Truly, I missed the job. Absolutely, I truly missed the job. But I knew it was time to go. I could have stayed another 5 due to the Florida retirement system. I could have went another 5 more years, and I chose not to. And I knew it was time to go, and I look at life, and I look at things totally different now than I did on the job. Totally different.
One of the things that I tell people all the time, and most of my guests and I, we agree and we laugh about it, is that I saw something the other day. I posted it actually on the Law Enforcement Radio Show Facebook page, also on MeWe and other ones. I got into police work to change the world, and I got out of it because the world changed me. And I say this, it wasn't all bad, the changes, and it wasn't all good. You can't unsee all the things you see, but I've accepted, and I'm at peace with where I am, and I'm okay with who I am.
Absolutely. Some people will say this, and I don't like when they say this. Well, you signed up for that. That's not true. We didn't sign up for the trauma. We didn't sign up for the nightmares. We didn't sign up for all these things that changed us physically and emotionally. We didn't sign up for that. We signed up, and Jay, I know I'm speaking for you when I say this. We signed up, and as cliche as it sounds, is to help people and do the right thing for the public and catch the bad guys. That was our job. There's nothing better than catching a bad guy, that's doing something wrong. It's a high. It's good. But you look at policing now, oh my goodness. I don't know. I really don't. I've only been out a year and a half. If I was out in Seattle or New York or Chicago, I don't know. It'd be very difficult, extremely difficult.
I don't know how they do it
guys
either.
Have been around the block for a while.
Yeah, I really don't get how they do it. And part of it is I get angry when people say things, well, were you bullied as a kid? Is that why you went into law enforcement? You want to show some authority and have power? Like, no, that wasn't it at all. And as a matter of fact, I think everybody I grew up with was bullied to some degree or another. There's 2 types of people when I was a kid. Bullies and those who got bullied, and those who fought back and the bullies left them alone. That's the way it was.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. Totally agree with you on that. Yeah. And speaking of bully, it's funny you should bring that up, is because there's bullying within the agency also, within a lot, people that get ranked. They start bullying people that one time they worked side by side with, or they start drinking the Kool-Aid and they become this company person, and they start bullying these officers because, number one, either they don't believe in what they believe in, or they think it should be done this way, and they become the schoolyard bully, and nobody wants to work for them.
Right.
You have a brand new sergeant that becomes a person that is just repulsive, micromanagement, and then next thing you know, people are transferring off his or her shift. The FBI would call that a clue. There's obviously something going on with that, and just because you have rank doesn't make you the top dog by any means.
We used to have a rule of thumb.
I have respect for administrators that get out there and work. And like you said earlier, that the NYPD, I think he was a deputy chief in New York, that got hit in the head with a bottle.
Yep.
And he's right there on the front lines with the guys and girls, and he got injured, got severely injured. As a matter of fact, it ended his career.
That's absolutely true.
So I give that man a lot of credit for being out there, where instead of staying on the side of the road, yelling, "Do this, do that," he's right in the mix of things, and God bless him.
We have, at least where I came from, we had a train of thought. There was 2 types of officers. You had very proactive officers, and then you had people who were basically mobile secretaries, and then you had people that they rotated in between. And the ones who got promoted the most in the agency I went through were the ones who never did anything. They were the last ones to show up at the calls. They never got blood on their uniforms. They never got complaints because they didn't lock anybody up. And they became the bosses. And they were the ones who then turned around and said, this is how you need to handle this serial rapist that's happening in this neighborhood. And they've never done it.
Right. There's call takers and there's call makers, and there were call takers, obviously. And then they'll say to you, and I remember this because I heard this quite a bit from my bosses. Well, when I was on the road, I used to do it. I used to do this, or I used to make 3 or 4 arrests a night. I'm like, dude, I used to work with you. That's a lie. That's an outright lie. That's why you have to lead by example. And good work. Cops that get out there and work, that make a lot of traffic stops, citizen contacts, they are going to get complaints. They are going to get in trouble. But as long as you're not being malicious, you're going to be fine. And I used to tell the guys and girls all the time, my squad, our job is to put bad people in jail. Let's go put bad people in jail.
Right.
And but on the flip side of that, don't be afraid to use discretion. You're not everybody that breaks the law needs to go to jail. Not by any means. So let's use discretion with that also. And you can be very successful. But when you have bosses that either forgot where they came from, or they were just horrible cops throughout their career, and they golfed with the chief and the sheriff or the admin or whatever, or they rubbed elbows with them and they started moving up in rank, and they sold their souls. I got nothing for you.
We're gonna leave that conversation because we could go on and on about that. And the reality is, the general population in America, they don't see those people. Those people don't leave their office. We used to say the most dangerous thing they encountered was a paper cut or a rusty paper clip. That was what they did. So that was the reality. The street cop is the one who catches all the grief. It goes to all the calls. The first one on the scene for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's almost always the bad and the ugly. And they're the ones who take the brunt. And they're the ones who people complain about the most. And so many misconceptions in America right now. I blame Hollywood. When I say Hollywood, not just movies, but television, social media, the news media, big time, especially the newspapers, radio and television as well. And that's part of the reason why we have this show. I want people to understand the reality of what the people behind the badge go through. And that's why you're here. In your career, what would be the number one misconception that most people have about policing or law enforcement in America?
I think that one of the biggest misconceptions is they think cops don't care, or they think cops are punks because they're driving home from work and they got a ticket for speeding. Well, when you decide to speed or run a red light, you take that chance of getting a ticket. Okay, so I think the biggest misconception is people don't think cops are human. That we don't have families, we don't have feelings, we don't have emotions, we don't get sick, we don't get hurt. We work at our days off to make a couple extra bucks. We work an overtime shift or an off-duty job or something like that because we don't get paid that well. And so they see on Hollywood, a murder is solved in an hour. That's pretty impressive. That's very impressive.
I wish it was that way.
They put a name into a computer and there's your suspect.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work that way. And I agree with you, Jay, when you say that Hollywood, the media has hurt law enforcement. That's why I encourage people to do ride-alongs, to get involved with their local departments and see the inside of what goes on. Besides just driving down the street and answering calls, there's a lot more that goes into law enforcement. This is the Law Enforcement Show. We're talking with retired Sheriff Sergeant Mark DiBona. Of all the radio stations in the United States, there are no other shows like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And on Facebook, there's only one official page. Do a search on Facebook for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And be sure to like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Time is running out to secure the Medicare coverage you deserve. Whether you're enrolling for the first time or looking for a better plan, our experts help you compare options to get more benefits, lower costs, and keep your doctors, all for free. Visit LEThealthy.com, LETHEALTHY.com. That's LEThealthy.com or call 866-427-1225, 866-427-1225 to learn more.
Back to our conversation with Mark DiBona. Mark's retired Sheriff Sergeant from the Seminole County, Florida Sheriff's Department. Mark, through my career in law enforcement, I know I was an exception in a lot of ways. I was in 4 police-involved shootings. The first 2, unlike what people believe or are told, I'd never fired a shot back. The second 2 were different. They were horrifying affairs. They had a big impact on me. But you know what scared me the most? Wasn't the drug raids. It was delivering a baby. Getting those calls petrified me.
And I can definitely understand that. We used to get dispatched to medical calls, and they would say somebody's not breathing, or it's an overdose, or something like that. We have basic training for that, and that's all it is basic training. We're not EMTs, we're not paramedics, obviously we're not doctors or nurses. And one thing, when you mentioned the baby, Jay, I was sitting at a fire station one night, and the FD went out on a call. It's about maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was sitting in their driveway, and a vehicle pulls in, and this lady jumps out of her vehicle. She hands me her 4-month-old baby and says, "I think my baby's not breathing." But I'll tell you, my heart dropped in my stomach. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I knew what to do, but I was just like, oh my God, this. So I checked the baby's pulse, and the baby didn't have a pulse. So I started doing CPR. I got on the radio, and I called for the fire departments. Now it seemed like it took forever for the fire department to get there, when in all reality it didn't. But mind you, like I said earlier, that station was out on a call. So now another station has to come in from another area. So I'm doing CPR on the baby, and the lady is screaming, crying, "Save my baby!" And I'm head to toe in sweat, and it was because I've done CPR in my 33 years several times, but I never did it on a kid or in this case an infant. So the FD got there. They started doing their thing. I got in the back of the ambulance with them, and I was helping them. I was bagging the baby, and I am driving in the ambulance, or riding in the ambulance to the emergency room. Well, when we got to the emergency room, time after that, the doctor said, "I'm sorry, but we're going to pronounce the baby dead." And I just sat there, I had tears coming down, and I just said, "How does this happen? This shouldn't happen. This shouldn't happen at all." Well, when they brought the family into the room, now the dad was there, and the dad went off on me. He's swearing at me, yelling at me, and I understand his frustration, and I understand he just lost his 4-month-old baby, but he's kept on saying to me, why couldn't you do any better? What do I pay you for? This is ridiculous. And I said, sir, I did the best I could, and I'm so sorry. But I felt like a failure. I felt like a total failure. That was a part of law enforcement that I was never trained to handle. Was never learned how to. Obviously I was trained in CPR, but I didn't understand the emotional aspect that came from that, and that right there was the damage of my career, emotionally. And it was absolutely the worst feeling in the world. I developed nightmares from it. One thing that reminded me of the baby is when you do CPR on anybody, the person makes that gurgling noise. Mm-hmm. And when my dogs drank their water out of their bowl, that I would think of that, and that would upset me, and I would start yelling at my dogs, stop. I was having nightmares. I had nightmares of the baby sitting on the front seat of my cruiser with its arms out, trying to reach out to me. Nightmares of the baby in my mailbox, and I'm like, I don't understand this. This is what is going on with me. I really don't understand this at all. And it got to the point where I was afraid to go to work, and I was praying that I would never get a medical call again, which obviously that's not going to happen because we go on medical calls. But it just would beat me up. The nightmares were so clear and so vivid where I got to the point where I was afraid to go to sleep, because I didn't want to go to sleep because I didn't want to have that nightmare. So I wasn't getting that good sleep that you're supposed to get. And I went to work one time, and I told the boss about my nightmares and about the call I had, and he told me his exact words were, "Toughen up, Buttercup."
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, now nobody understands how I'm feeling. And I was talking to my wife about it. She said, "Well, I think you probably know that you could go. I do know you need to go see a therapist." And I'm like, or a mental health professional. I'm like, I can't do that. If the job finds out that I'm seeking mental health help, I could be fired, or I could be put on the rubber gun squad, or I could be reassigned. And as we know, if word ever got out, people won't want to work with me because I'll look weak. And it was just a horrible feeling. And these nightmares went on forever. And then they came to a point where I had to renew my CPR. And when it got time to do the infant CPR, I started doing it, and I put the mannequin down, and I ran into the bathroom, and I threw up. And I started having chest pains, and that was the first panic attack I ever had in my life. Was that? And it was the most weirdest feeling in the world. I'm a young guy. I shouldn't be having chest pains. I shouldn't be sweating, or something to that. And then during that also affected my work productivity. I was an active sergeant. I was right out there with the guys and girls. Writing tickets, making arrests, answering calls. I was a very proactive sergeant because I truly believed in leading by example. Well, that went down to zero productivity, and weight gain, and outbursts, And I just said, this is just, I don't get this. And that affected my evaluation also, where I got a below standards evaluation. And I also went to 9/11 3 or 4 days after the buildings were hit. And one of the things I remember from there was the smell of death, the burnt flesh, and the very somber atmosphere of being at 9/11. And when I came back to Florida after being up there for 2 or 3 weeks, one of the first calls I got was a vehicle fire. And when I pulled, it was on a major highway. And when I pulled up with another deputy, the guy was in the car screaming, "Get me out of here! Help me! Help me!" And we got our fire extinguishers out. And we couldn't put the car. We couldn't put the fire out, and we watched him burn to death. And I started having nightmares of that also. And I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. But I don't want to look weak because, as we know, Jay, the stigma of looking weak in law enforcement is you're pretty much going to be blackballed at that point.
Yeah.
Nobody will want to work with you. And, cops are the biggest talkers in the world. And you don't want to get that reputation of looking weak. So what do? You start drinking, you start self-medicating, you start doing risky behavior. And that's the side of law enforcement that the public doesn't see.
Or when they see that side, for example, I see videos all the time, some cop screaming, yelling, mouthing off, and I think, man, I wonder if he's okay. Sure. A lot of these guys go from being, I say guys, that means men and women, go from being great police to 6, 7, 8, 9 months later, they're acting out, they're gaining weight, their behavior changes, and they're unsociable, and they're angry all the time. Right,
yeah. And we all know that one guy or girl that we work with that they're off at the world all the time. Well, we're trained to take care of each other. Going to the range and 2-man, 3-man entries, all this stuff. But we're not trained to take care of each other. And when you work side by side with a person, that all of a sudden their demeanor has started changing, their work productivity has gone down. They don't look the same physically, or mostly because you can read people's faces because people on their face carry their emotions.
Right.
And that and more so as a sergeant, that is your job to keep an eye on your troops. But when I was beat down, and then my evaluation, I worked for a micromanager lieutenant who verbally abused me.
We'll take a short break. We are talking with retired Sheriff Sergeant Mark DiBona. We're going to talk more about trauma, the after effects, where he's at now, how he got to where he's at now. There's a couple ways you can stay in touch and keep informed of what's going on with the Law Enforcement Talk radio show. Number one, go to our website, letradio.com. Sign up for our email newsletter. It's real easy to find. I promise we don't spam you. I send out about one email every 2 weeks or so. And there's also a feature called Broadcast Channels on our Facebook page, where we send messages directly to your inbox, directly to your messenger. Real easy to sign up for. Make sure you like or follow the Law Enforcement Talk radio show Facebook page. And up top, you'll see broadcast channels, one for free podcast versions of the radio show, another one top post of the day. So you too can stay informed quickly, easily, and best of all, like always, free. This is the Law Enforcement Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Are you over 70 with a life insurance policy you no longer need or can't afford to keep? You can turn it into cash. Get more information with no obligation at letsavings.com. That's letsavings.com, letsavings.com, or call 866-480-4252. Again, that's 866-480-4252.
Lowe's knows you want the best for Dad. This Father's Day, help him take on any project with big deals on DeWalt. Right now, get a free XR 8 amp-hour battery when you buy select DeWalt tools. That's not all. Get up to 2 free select tools when you buy a select DeWalt 20-volt max battery kit. Maximum initial battery voltage measured without a work load is 20 volts. Nominal voltage is 18.
Back to our conversation with retired Sheriff Sergeant Mark DiBona on the Law Enforcement Show, retired from Seminole County Sheriff's Department in Florida. Also spent many years policing in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Mark, before we went to break, you started talking, and you took me right back to a lot of things. And that's the good and the bad with this show. I don't talk a lot about what I've been through, but some of the nightmares, and they're not always connected directly to the incident. Briefly, I remember being a young rookie police, a beautiful spring day. We had a call for a man who set himself on fire, and I'm sitting there in my head is screaming out loud. I think I was 22, going, they never trained me for this. I don't know what to do. I hope it's a false call. I hope it's not for real. I get there, and the guy literally is on fire and falls to the ground when we get there. And people are screaming, and rightfully so. They're upset. It's their family member. And, you know, to this day, and it's not often, thank God, but to this day, that burning guy will show up in my dreams. And it doesn't freak me. It doesn't freak me out anymore because I know it comes to the territory. But when you talked about that baby, dude, there's nothing worse than the trauma of policing, and you're not able to save the lives of the little innocent ones.
Something that is for a child that did not have the chance to live a decent life, or to become an adult, to become a successful person. That person's life was gone. And the guilt that I had from that was I felt that I couldn't prolong that kid's life, that baby's life, and that was just traumatic. I went to the baby's funeral. I cried at the funeral. And every day when I went to work, that's what I would think about all the time was that baby. And again, like I said earlier, that led to outbursts, that led to discipline issues, and I started getting a reputation of being a wise guy and not being a good boss, because I was just so angry and physically gaining a bunch of weight. And so I wasn't happy with my appearance because when I stress out, I like to eat. Yeah. That's my big thing is eating. I would go to Dairy Queen and I would get the triple blizzard. Yeah, and then I would wash it down with a Diet Coke, thinking I was okay. Then I would go to McDonald's.
You
later.
Sound like me.
And I would get a Big Mac.
Yeah.
And the weight gain happened so fast because I was a guy that always kept myself in pretty decent shape. I mean, I'm not a gym rat, but I like to exercise and things like that, and my appearance also. Then it started affecting my marriage, where I was very upset with my wife that she kept on telling me to get help, and I'm like, you don't get this, you don't understand, because you're not on the job. You don't get this, and then ultimately led to a suicide attempt, or actually 2 suicide attempts on the same night, and which I as much as I hate to say this, and I truly hate to say this, but when I used to go to suicide calls, I was always wondering, I read the suicide note, and I'm like, why are people killing themselves because of this? Can't you get stronger? Can't you get better? Or something like that. But when you're fighting the demons and you're fighting the stigma, it's difficult. And in the law enforcement world or the first responder world, it's even more difficult because our job is to help people and not to ask for help.
And not to be the one who needs help.
And that's where we get changed. Exactly. And that's where we've got to change that culture, that it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take a day off, to not to work so much. And when I decided to die by suicide, I wrote a note out, and it was a very angry note. And on a spiritual level, also, I was very upset with God because I went to God for help, and I felt God wasn't listening to me. Well, God, in a spiritual level, again, God leads you down paths for a reason in life, and those are lessons learned reasons. But at that point, I couldn't see those lessons. All I could see was anger. And when I decided to die by suicide that night, when I put the gun in my mouth and I was ready to pull the trigger, fortunately, another deputy pulled up next to me, and I didn't tell him originally what I was doing because when he pulled up, I took the gun out of my mouth, and I didn't tell him right away. But during the course of our conversation, I did tell him what happened, and he told me that you need to get help. I'm like, yeah, I know, I've heard this 100 times from my wife. Went home that morning and then had another suicide attempt at my pool. I started drinking heavily and had the gun out. And then finally I said, you know something, this is not good. I have got to get some help because I am on a trail. I am on a path of disaster. That's what I'm on. And I thought about also is, I don't have any kids, but I thought about my wife, that, what's going to happen to my wife if I decided to die by suicide? What's her life going to be? What's my mom going to think? What's my brothers and sisters going to think? What are my coworkers going to think? And I thought about that also, and that got me to a point where I need to get help. So what I did was I hid it from the job. I ended up going back to Boston for a couple of weeks, and I checked myself into an in-house treatment facility, and I was able to get some help there. But I didn't get the help that I thought I was going to get because I was ashamed and embarrassed. So cops are good liars, and I lied my way out of there. And came back to Florida, was extremely angry with myself, with the job, and bounced from one therapist to another. And then finally I found my present therapist, who's actually a retired officer, and she gets it. But my suicide attempt was in 2008, and I retired in 2019. So I went to work for 11 or 12 years with these issues. Now, granted, being in therapy definitely helped, but I had to say it was okay to go on medication. It was okay to go on sleep medication. And it was okay to hurt. And that's what my present therapist taught me was that you're only human. And then I said to her, I said, well, I'm sure I'm not the only cop that ever thinks like that. And she goes, no, you're not. I said, well, I want to help other cops. And her exact words were, well, you can't help somebody if you're not healthy.
You can't give away what you don't have. That's the old saying that always...
Exactly. Yeah, you're 100% right.
And the only way you can get it is you got to do the work. Look, you didn't go see a therapist and magically everything's better. You take a pill and everything was better all of a sudden. There's a lot of work involved in this.
There's more than you think there is. It's like I was a big fan of the TV show The Sopranos. And even Tony Soprano went to a therapist. And he had some good sessions and some not so good sessions. And so I kept to say, I want to give back. And then she said, well, the only way you're going to be able to give back is when you get healthy yourself and when you understand the issues and the demons that you're battling. And then I'll tell you when I think you're ready to start giving back. So she did tell me it was time to get ready eventually, but I still spoke very angry. I was very upset with my agency because when I told my agency about my suicide attempt, honestly, it wasn't the reaction I thought I was going to get. I thought that I was going to get this big hug and say, hey, we'll get you through this. And it was the exact opposite, actually.
Here's
really
the truth about that, from my perspective. And I tell people, there's people I've known who've lost loved ones in line of duty. They were friends of mine, and I've known them for years. And then when their loved one was killed, I stopped talking to them because I was scared to death to talk to them. Afraid I'd say the wrong thing. I'd rather crawl through a wall like a rat than talk to them. And if someone came to me that I worked with and said the same thing, I would be afraid. I wouldn't know how to handle it. I know better now, but back then it would be, well, look, stiff upper lip, suck it up, buttercup, all that stuff. And I think we've gotten better. Not where we need to be yet, but I think we've gotten better with healing, helping our own.
Oh, we have definitely got better. There's no question about that. Like if you told me in 1985 there's going to be units in an agency called peer support, I'd be like, what's peer support? I don't get that. Or if you told me that I'd be on a radio show talking about law enforcement, mental health, and stress and suicide, I'd be like, you're crazy. But you got to have that difficult conversation. We go to domestics. We go to people's houses of husband and wives that have been married for years that are arguing over bills, and especially what's going on right now with the pandemic and everything else that's going on in this world. And we're telling people how to live their lives, and this is what to do. But so we're having that difficult conversation with them. But why can't we have that difficult conversation with our coworkers and more so with ourselves?
I think we're going to have you back on the show to talk about that. Before we end, how can people get in touch with you and find out more about what you do to help?
Okay, so what I did was I got better and I started marketing myself, and I have a Facebook page. It's Mark DiBona, Mark MARK DIBONA. That's my Facebook page, and I post a lot of mental health, wellness, and I network myself to speak on radio shows like this, do presentations at conferences, webinars, and I'm very, very open about my struggles. And I don't skate around it, and I'm okay to have that difficult conversation. So I want people, and I don't tell my story for pity. That is the last thing I want, is pity from me. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. But I want people to say, wow, that cop did struggle mentally, or I know somebody that's having an issue right now, or I'm having an issue right now. So that is where I want the public, and I want our brothers and sisters in law enforcement and all the first responder worlds to understand that this stuff does happen.
And on that note, we have to cut you off. Mark, thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
You're very, very welcome. It was truly an honor to get the message out. Thank you, Jay, so much.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.